You're tuned in to the MtG Cable cast, where they cover Magic, the Gathering finance. All right? You don't know about it? You're tuned in right now and get ready to learn some shit. Buckle your seatbelts and light a blunt and get ready for the MtG Cable cast. Starring Reptar and Thirsty, them onion head motherfuckers.
Alrighty guys, welcome to the newest episode of the Cabal Cast, and this week we are actually holding ourselves accountable, and that is for Avatar. So in our classic Goldilocks style, too high, too low, just right, and what the hype of those is. So with that, we'll take a look back, see what we said, and see where we are. Let's take it away.
Yep, so to start out, my overhyped card was Phoenix Fleet Airship, and this is a 2 and 2 black artifact vehicle, 4/4, with flying. That says at the beginning of your end step, if you sacrificed a permanent this turn, create a token that's a copy of this vehicle. Then, as long as you control 8 or more permanents named Phoenix Fleet Airship, this vehicle is an artifact creature, so that means you no longer have to crew it for it to attack, and then it has crew 1, a very easy cost. So you could effectively go Forest, Land War Elf, Land, and then like nothing, turn 3, drop a Phoenix Fleet Airship, crew it if you wanted to, or another dork like a Badger Mole Cub or something on 2, and then crew it off, start going. The card itself just dropped off the rock. This was a $16 card when we did our hype episode. It now has a market of about $3.60. And when I discussed this card in our hype episode over on Patreon, I suggested that this would actually see play rates similar to Progenitor Mimic and Mechanized Production in Commander, and its play rate is actually about 20% of the rate of each of those in Commander, and also inside Constructed. Now, looking at Constructed, the only place it really exists is within Modern, where a few Brave Souls have actually slotted this into their Yawgmoth combo decks, and also inside the Warren Soul Trader combo lists. And this isn't a cornerstone in the Yawgmoth list, but it is in the Warren Soul Trader list. But this basically kind of plays into what it says, which is just it's a really weird payoff for an Aristocrats list because you only get one trigger at the end of your turn. So you only make one copy of this per turn. You can't just dump a bunch out. And this only looks at your turn, not all turns. So in a game of Commander and a pot of 4, if this had better text, you can make 4 copies in a single go-around. And in the next go-around, you could have all 8 to actually activate this. And so as this is really only being played in Modern, in those 2 specific decks, I'm pretty sure my analysis for this card was correct.
Yeah, this is one that I think we'd both kind of highlighted as like any comparison to something like Smuggler's Copper comes up overwhelmingly short.
Yes.
And just it always looked like kind of a win more to me. Mm-hmm. Like obviously it goes in like a Yawgmoth style strategy and the Soul Warden type strategy, but it's not something that on its own is like going to win you the game with the engine. It's just a couple of extra steps to win more, but hey, it has been adopted, so it's doing something.
Yeah, exactly, right? And for you weren't really looking at any particular card that was overhyped.
No, I took this one a little bit more abstract, and my overhyped was the Play Booster pre-sales, because Play Boosters were pre-selling for like $250 plus at one point, and there were a lot of people that were hyped on this for obvious reasons. It's a good IP. Mm-hmm. Can't deny that. It's incredibly popular. It's multi-generational.
Yep.
And while, yes, we haven't had a show in like 10 years, it's still as relevant as it ever was. And I thought that people going crazy for the Play Boosters it was too much, because my expectation was this would be the first set that would truly really have the hype entirely at collectors of the IP, because this was not a set that I think people were necessarily, get to this later, excited for the power level or anything of this set. This was one that it seemed to me was very much the people that were excited to play Aang. They were excited to play Korra. Like, they wanted to see the IP.
It's rough, buddy.
And Yeah, it's that doesn't last. Once they see the IP, it's done.
Yeah.
Like they got the card, that's it. They don't need to interact with it anymore, and it's it has sold worse for us than even Spider-Man, which is sitting at distro still, and there is still Avatar sitting at distro as well. And this was kind of the set that, with the hype that was following prior to release, I was like, this has got to be the like boiling point for the
Yeah.
Universes Beyond stuff. This is the one that I think may finally like indicate this might not be the best idea, and it looks like that's where we are. But yeah,
Yeah, we're going to touch on it later, but I think a problem with the set that you brought up in the Patreon episode is at the core of why that is the case. And then moving on to underhyped, I was looking at Redirect Lightning. And when we did that episode, the market price on it was about $13.50, and the market price right now is down to about $10.25. It's a very slow reduction in price. For those that don't know, Redirect Lightning is an instant lesson. It costs 1 red and has the text, as an additional cost to cast this spell, pay 5 life or 2 generic mana. The effect of the spell is change the target of target spell or ability with a single target. And what I said in our hype episode on Patreon is that I expected this to be a miss in Standard and a long-term gainer in Commander. And based on the numbers we're seeing on Rec, I was absolutely correct with that synopsis. Nobody's playing this card in Standard. There are a couple of lists in both Modern, Legacy, and Vintage that have popped up with Redirect Lightning to kind of test the waters and see if it was useful in environments where Thoughtseize and whatever you want to call it, hand poke or hand destruction, has become more prevalent. But it's not really taking over those formats, and is kind of dying back down in popularity there. But Commander is where it's taking off. It's in approximately 74,000 decks, which is 45% of the play rate of Bolt Bend, and only 11% of the play rate of Deflecting Swat. And the reason I think there's a huge gap there between Deflecting Swat and Redirect Lightning and Deflecting Swat and Bolt Bend is because Deflecting Swat came in that precon. So there are a number of people that just resubmitted the precon back with both of those commanders.
Yeah.
And eventually time will kind of flatten all of those things. And we've also had a handful of reprints directly of Deflecting SWAT since in various supplementals. So there's
way more accessible.
Exactly. And then Bolt Bend and Redirect Lightning are both coming from packs. So you either have to open it, trade for it, or buy it directly. But eventually we'll see that kind of play rate even out. So the price of Redirect Lightning might be kind of held back right now, but I said this would be a long-term gainer, and I do believe we will see that, so I'm going to take the dub here on this.
This is one that I think is really interesting because, and this isn't always the case, but when you look at like the pricing history and stuff on both Stoxy and TCG Player, you see like the graph for the normal version of the card. And then you go over to the showcase graph, and it is the same, except that the heights are like twice as high, but comparatively, and the valleys are twice as low, which I would not have expected on like an IP set for the showcase to fluctuate more than the base.
Yeah.
Because to me, that stuff is like, that's why you get it, is the IP, the showcase. But yeah, this is one that I also agreed. I think this is just so insane long term, and there is absolutely a world where this is like potentially a sideboard card in some Storm list in Eternal formats, because you can sack a Warren's token if you need to, and that's not that bad.
No, exactly.
But yeah, this was one that I also identified as this is probably, I could see eventually maybe not getting as high as Deflecting SWAT was after its first printing, before any meaningful reprint, but certainly could be in the $20 range, even being a rare in a collector booster set.
Yeah, it's like the absolute hurdle to get over for Bolt Bend, Redirect Lightning, Reroute, etc. is the fact that Deflecting SWAT is free and is at Rogue Wrath, costs 0 mana.
Yeah,
So your CEDH players are going to be more hesitant to adapt Redirect Lightning and Bolt Bend because they actually cost mana compared to Deflecting
exactly.
Swat. But if you were to just look at your casual commander players, five life is a pittance. 3 mana is
Yeah,
a pittance. They will adapt
nothing.
these cards.
Absolutely,
Now,
yeah.
for you, you are looking at an endemic problem with
Yes,
Avatar
and
for your underhyped portion.
indeed, and this is something I mentioned earlier, and that is underhyped was the power level. And in general and comparatively to recent sets. Now, I know there were a lot of design decisions made over the last 5 years as far as rotation, as far as legality and formats and all of these things. And there's a chance that a portion of Avatar was designed under different conditions than what it was released under. But this was a set that, like, I mean, we have Badger Mole Cub, but we really don't have anything else that's breaking out in Eternal formats to kind of help carry this set along. We don't even have a Spider Punk in this to be like, oh, well, maybe it's like fringe playable in these decks. This was just not a good set in terms of impact on formats. I mean, standard, sure, it's designed for that, but that's not something that's going to push the set's value anymore because of how heavily printed it's going to be.
Yep.
And there just wasn't a card that you look at. There was no Sheoldred the Apocalypse where you're like, holy shit, this thing's going to be in every single format.
And me.
Badger, yeah, and mean it and be impactful. And without that, I think that is significantly more to the like detriment of the set than bad power level with a chase card. Lord of the Rings obviously had great cards for you to chase.
Yep.
But we know that outside of Soulstone, there was not much to chase in that set. That being Spider-Man, obviously. And we saw what happened there. And I think that this is something that there are cards here, such as Redirect Lightning, that could eventually have a home and indicate some kind of power level. And I think there could be those gems there. But right now, this set is just very, very indicative of the problem with the Universes Beyond sets. Doctor Who, same thing, was not very impactful. Spider-Man, not very impactful. Great IPs, awesome for collectors. We had a ton of people that showed up that wanted to play in the pre-release to interact with their IP. But without a power level behind that, that's going to be one of the worst things they could possibly do. And I'm not saying it has to be pushed, because it doesn't. And I understand that a lot of times it seems like WotC is either going to push it into oblivion or not. But this, as like, it reminds me of when we had Kaladesh and Aether Revolt back to back. And they were like, okay, we need to tone this down. Now we need to bring Amonkhet. And Amonkhet was such a low power level that it made an awful format. And especially now with sets sticking in standard for, I guess, 40 years or whatever it is before rotation, sets like this get so much worse for the game because its impact is felt on your gateway format for a longer period. And I was like, you know what? This is way lower than it should be.
Yeah.
Long term, again, could be there, but probably not.
Nope. The only thing I want to asterisk is, so Badger Mole Club is the obvious look as the card that is basically taking over multiple constructed formats. There was another card that people were looking at, and others were like, nah, that's going to be absolute buns bad.
Yeah.
And that's Wan Shi Tong, Librarian. For those that don't know, it's X and a double blue for a legendary creature, Bird Spirit, 1/1, Flash, Flying Vigilance. When Washitong enters, put X +1/+1 counters on him, then draw half X cards rounded down. Whenever an opponent searches their library, put a +1/+1 counter on Wan Shi Tong and draw a card. Now, there are a handful of parallels to Wan Shi Tong in older constructed formats, especially Legacy, where a lot of people expected this card to do anything. And it has popped up in lists here and there for people testing it. But when you have constructed formats where the Xerox suite includes Thoughtseize, that means, generally speaking, it also includes Fatal Push. And it's a lot easier to Fatal Push Wan Shi Tong than it is one of its comparative pieces, which is Opposition Agent, which costs 3. Now, giving Revolt to your Fatal Push, also not that difficult in those formats. but it is a barrier to entry for that. Wan Shi Tong also, and Opposition Agent also die immediately to Lightning Bolt and Swords to Plowshares, which are very prevalent in those formats. So what effect do you want to attach to a body that's going to be meaningful? And at the end of the day, we found no meaningful way to play Wan Shi Tong in at least Legacy. Modern is kind of on the downswing until the RCQ season starts again, and Vintage just does what Vintage does until testing for Eternal Weekend starts. So that format is kind of irrelevant right now. So that's like the next best card in Standard that people were hyped for that actually did or didn't do anything. What I find interesting is looking at the top cards in Standard right now and seeing Badger Mole Cub in the 1, 2, 3. It is like in the top 5.
Yeah.
Badger Mole Cub actually pushed a ton of cards from Edge of Eternity, which is interesting that this set actually had very relevant impact on a set prior, like literally one before. It pushed Ouroborite, it pushed Gene Pollinator, everything that goes in one or both of those combo decks. After that, it takes until like the top 50 cards to find the Lessons suite now. And that's just all Avatar cards, right? That made that deck. And then you have Airbending combo with Omniscience. But if Omniscience didn't exist, it might play Omniscience. I'm actually not 100%. It used to. If Omniscience didn't exist and if Craterhoof Behemoth didn't exist, then that deck really wouldn't do anything. It makes a million billion allies and then passes the turn in a format where there's Fire Magic, caught 1 red, get all your allies. We have, I'm pretty sure, Day of Judgment in the format. We have Pyroclasm in the format. We have a number of ways to just deal with, make a bunch of creatures, pass the turn, hope for the best, right?
Yeah.
So there's just this awkward balancing act of this forever long Standard that you mentioned that's going to play against Avatar for a while, where nothing else is really kind of breaking out and showing its strength. The lands are fairly popular when you look at Dawn Glare, but they're not really doing a whole lot in Constructed. Abandoned Air Temple is probably one of the most powerful ones because it's like Gavany Township prior. It just puts a +1/+1 counter on all your creatures. But that's good for an Alpha Strike. You got to get to a position where you can Alpha Strike with defense so that you just don't get blown out by Fire Magic or Pyroclasm or any of this other stuff. So to your point, I think there is just an endemic problem with the power level of Avatar where people just aren't seeking these cards. They bought what they wanted to play what they wanted, and that was it. They just disengaged from the set because it's not meaningful right now. And to move on so we don't spend all the episode on that, moving to Just Right, my call out was actually part of the Airbending combo, Aang Swift Savior. That is a 1 white and a blue for a 2/3 flash flying. When Aang enters, airbend up to 1 target creature or spell. End of that ability.
Ooh.
And then it has a waterbending ability for 8 where you transform Aang. And the backside is Aang and La, Ocean's Fury, reach, trample. Whenever Aang and La attack, put a +1/+1 counter on each tapped creature you control. So this card basically does the exact same thing as the Airbending Temple that I mentioned, and the price on this dropped like I expected from about $9 down to about $4 right now. So just the expected pre-release sale into standard pricing. And we knew from day one that Aang was going to play into the Airbending combo deck because that went up. People knew about it. It was very quick and very easy to assemble. We just didn't know how good Lessons was at the time. Aang also plays into the Azorius aggro deck that exists in Standard and into the Allies deck in Standard. But in my review of Aang, I did only mention the Azorius aggro deck, aside from the Airbending combo. We knew about it. We posted about it. But I didn't know if it would take over Standard the way it kind of did. And, the Spotlight Series in Atlanta showed that it was just an amazing deck overall. I did not expect there to be an actual Allies deck in Standard. I did not think we could go wide enough to make that a meaningful strategy.
Me neither.
Right? So I just
had no idea.
Just whiffed on that one. And with all the Kithkin we got, just making a bunch of little turds, that makes Craterhoof Behemoth a lot better, especially because we got another Priest of Titania kind of effect on a Kithkin.
Yeah.
So we're just going to start dumping Craterhoofs out pretty quickly. Now, in Modern, again, a few Brave Souls are testing this inside the Azorius Blink decks, and I did mention that. Inside Commander, it's not really seeing meaningful play as a card in the 99. And as a Commander itself, this card is basically a dud, so it's really just kind of locked into Standard right now. I missed on my evaluation of Standard, as I really didn't think that the various ways to Airbend combo could compete with the Izzet deck, but I was proven wrong, like I said, coming out of the Spotlight series. So while I don't think there's a ton of hype for this card in particular in Standard, because I missed so badly on this card's impact in Standard and the true lack of utilization in Modern, I'm actually going to take the L on this, because I thought we would actually see it more so in Modern than we are. And again, while we did talk about the Omniscience combo, we have talked about it over time, I really did not think that it was going to be such a big player in Standard, because it is a pass the turn combo. I really thought it would just get blown out, so I didn't expect it to be as good as it is.
I can't remember the last time we had a good pass the turn combo in Standard. Like ever. Which I think doesn't necessarily mean you missed on anything here. Just not something that I think we ever would have. Sorry, go ahead.
I can think about times in Standard where we've put the screws into people. Like, we've had them in the hard lock, and it's just like, okay, now go. In your upkeep, I'm going to tap all my creatures down to opposition to keep you locked down. Like that kind of stuff. But yeah, we used to have a term for this. In the original Super Smash Brothers, Mario is the character that's just ones all down the board. He's the Ryu of that game, the sole bad guy.
Yep.
And in that game, everybody basically has a down smash except for Mario, who has like the worst drill kick. And if you took somebody off the level and you drill kicked them, you just had to yell, "Now mess up."
Yeah.
Because if you did, if that person messed up, you got the kill as Mario.
You were fine. You got the kill.
Exactly.
Yeah. They just had to not land their attach on the edge of the
exactly. And so
level,
that's kind of what Angsquith Savior. You just drill kick them off the level, and you're just like, all right, now mess up, and then hope it works.
That's so good. Yeah. My Just Right was actually hyped for the pre-release. And this was something that I will still take the W on. But I did not expect, as I kind of mentioned earlier, that was the end of engagement for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. It was, we went to the pre-release, we were hyped for it because of the IP. We played the game that we wanted to play, the game that, we love with the IP we love, etc. And now we're just kind of done with it.
Yeah.
And I think that is fine if it's about the IP. Mm-hmm. I don't think that is fine for the game. And I wanted to kind of hone on that because, again, it's, people were excited for this. Yes. They wanted to play the IP. There were a lot of people that came out with their kids, and their kids played. A friend of mine, it was their son's first time playing Magic, period, but he loved Avatar so much, he wanted to come out and play, and learned and built a deck. It was really cool. And that's awesome. But not having any substance or anything like that afterwards to keep engagement going is, I think, where the big problem is. Because while you can be as hype as you want to be for it, it's not great for the LGS. But I love seeing pre-releases like this. I love families coming out to pre-releases. Mm-hmm. I love people cosplaying at pre-releases. Like, that's cool. Represent, whatever character you love in the show. That's awesome. That's the kind of thing that has always been great to see. And I've loved that at pre-releases because that should be the, gateway fun moment. That's what they were for decades. Mm-hmm. And I think that it was nice to see that happen and people genuinely happy, not because of the power level of the cards, but because the people they liked were on there and it was meaningful for them. It was impactful. It was something that they will very likely remember for a long time.
Yeah.
And that's just really cool to see. And I love that we can get that. I expect the same thing for Lorwyn at the pre-release, and we'll touch on that in the recap episode, even though that was not one of the things I predicted, because this is nostalgia for a Magic set.
Yes.
Rather than nostalgia for an IP.
Yep.
And it's not the same as any of the times we revisited Ravnica. I Ravnica was always a popular set. Lorwyn was a set that gained popularity after it was gone because that standard environment was miserable. That's I'm excited to see that. So we'll see if that can continue because my hope
Yeah.
is that if we see this level of hype for a pre-release for an actual Magic IP set, maybe they'll keep engaging with it afterwards.
Yeah.
And that'll just go down to any other format where those cards are legal.
Yep.
So
I have a lot of anecdotal information about Avatar at the LGS level. So we do drafts on Wednesdays and Fridays. Fridays is always a standard set. Wednesday is always a vote. And I don't know after the first week or two if Avatar was voted on for Wednesdays. I'm pretty sure Bloombarrow won at least one. There were a number of attempts to draft Modern Horizons 2. And
okay, yeah.
I think it beat Avatar out in the polls as well. But those Wednesday night drafts don't always get a full pod. They'll get like 6 players, or maybe they'll even like go up higher towards 10 or 11. And so the draft experience is kind of weird in general. When it comes to the Friday night stuff, I think those always stayed pretty steady at about 8 players here and there. Again, early on in a set's lifespan, we'll see a lot more players, and then they'll just kind of attrition. But Final Fantasy brought more players in on Friday. I know that much. But for that set, they also did the Chocobo racing. So people were coming in to get their points for the lithograph and then the pin. There was none of that with this set that could have brought additional people into the drafts to try and keep numbers high. And I'm curious to know if Lorwyn will see high numbers because it's a good set, it's a nostalgic set, whatever. And then again, what happens with Turtles? Because there was no prompt for Lord of the Rings draft. I don't think there was an ancillary piece, but it was also a supplemental, so the price point was a little bit higher anyway, which is can be unsavory. But if we have another UB set in Turtles where there's no incentive to come back to the LGS and engage like there was with Final Fantasy and the Chocobo racing, my curiosity will be piqued to know if truly that is the thing that brought people back, was this ancillary thing to be doing, and without that, Avatar just kind of like middled into nowhere, right?
It just sat there, not really, like, it was fine, it just wasn't doing a lot.
Yeah, and I know also from firsthand experience that our pre-release numbers for Avatar were not as good as Final Fantasy and were not as good as Modern Horizons 3. And we'll probably talk about this over time. The Lorwyn numbers, from my understanding, were insane. We had to cancel everything else on Friday. And the only tables that weren't used were the TTRPG tables. We canceled Commander, we canceled Draft, and we canceled Standard to put all of the pre-release players there for Friday night. And that's not including what happened on Saturday, which we can touch on later. But the Avatar didn't have those numbers. Don't know why. We saw good, but not great.
Yeah.
So I think hype for that pre-release was also correct down here. It is a generational IP. It isn't as big of an IP as Final Fantasy is. It's weird that Lorwyn drew that much better comparatively to Avatar, especially for people that haven't been engaging with Magic for such a long time.
Yeah.
So I don't understand that, but I didn't really play Lorwyn Sealed, and I only played the Lorwyn Standard. So it's difficult for me to understand. I think Turtles is going to be another set similar to Avatar, where we might see, at least here, smaller pre-release comparatively to Final Fantasy, comparatively to Lorwyn.
Yeah.
Because the nostalgia pull is going to be there, but it might not pull as many people as WotC could have hoped.
Yeah.
Anything else before we cut out?
Nope.
All right. So for at MtG Cabalcast on Twitter, Facebook, Patreon, and YouTube, I am at Halt I Am Reptar. You are
At Damon _Thurston.
We'll see you next time.